A young billionaire was visiting his daughter's grave when he saw a strange little girl. As he approached, he froze upon noticing she was identical to his deceased daughter. Autumn painted the cemetery in shades of red and gold as Leonard Leo. Hale walked among the headstones. At 29, he already possessed more money than most people could earn in 10 lifetimes. His cybersecurity app had revolutionized personal data protection, making him one of the youngest billionaires in the tech sector. Forbes magazine called him the reclusive genius. Investors loved him. Competitors feared him. But none of that mattered to Leo. Not here, not now. Adjusting his coat against the cold breeze, Leo walked firmly along a path he knew by heart. His Italian shoes crunched dry leaves that covered the ground. The white daisies in his hand were wrapped in simple cellophane, no elaborate arrangements or expensive packaging. Sophie never cared about such things. The white marble headstone appeared before him, simple and elegant. Sophie Hale, 2017-2022. Loved forever. Leo placed the flowers in the small vase and knelt, his eyes fixed on the letters engraved in the stone. "Hi, Princess," he whispered, his voice as soft as the wind. "Sorry I'm late this week. We had that meeting with the Japanese investors that couldn't be postponed." His face remained impassive as he spoke. Anyone watching would notice the lack of emotion in his expressions. No tears, no trembling lips, just a perfectly controlled mask. But inside, the emptiness consuming him was immense. Like a black hole, the pain of loss sucked away any spark of happiness that tried to emerge in his life. 2 years. 2 years since Sophie closed her eyes for the last time. 2 years living on autopilot, breathing because it was necessary, eating because his body demanded it, following a routine devoid of purpose. Leo ran his fingers over the date on the headstone. His mind took him back 7 years to when he met Sarah at a tech conference in San Francisco. She worked for the magazine that was interviewing him. Red hair, piercing green eyes, and a smile that made Leo forget the answer to the question she had just asked. "Sorry, could you repeat that?" he requested, feeling oddly off balance. "I asked where you see yourself in 5 years," Sarah smiled. The recorder in her hand pointed at him. "Creating something that matters," he replied. What began with coffee after the interview turned into dinners, weekends in Napa Valley, and nights in his apartment overlooking the bay. Leo had never felt so connected to anyone. Sarah was independent, intelligent, and constantly challenged him. For 3 months, he believed he had found something more valuable than any startup. "I'm pregnant," she announced one evening, emotionless, as he opened a bottle of wine. The bottle remained untouched. Leo felt a wave of emotions he had never experienced: fear, anticipation, joy, panic, all at once. When he finally managed to speak, his voice was shaky. "That's wonderful." Sarah did not share his enthusiasm. In the following months, he noticed the signs. The way she avoided talking about the future, how she distanced herself whenever he mentioned baby names or ideas for the nursery. But Leo ignored those signs, convinced that once the child was born, everything would change. Sophie was born on a rainy February morning. Leo was in an important meeting when he got the call. He dropped everything and drove like a madman to the hospital. When he held his daughter for the first time, he felt complete in a way no professional success had ever given him. "She's perfect," he whispered to Sarah, who seemed strangely distant in the hospital bed. 3 days later, when he returned to the hospital with a bouquet of flowers and a small gold bracelet for Sarah, he found only an empty cradle and a confused nurse. "The mother was discharged this morning, sir. She took the baby with her." It was only when he arrived home, desperate, that he found the note on the kitchen counter. "I can't do this, Leo. I never wanted to be a mother. You'll be better for her than I ever could be. Please don't look for me." Leo hired detectives, searched social networks, tried mutual contacts. Sarah had completely vanished, changing her number, address, and apparently her life. "Your coffee, sir." His driver's voice brought him back to the present. James stood respectfully a few steps away, holding a thermal cup. It was part of the routine. Leo always had a coffee while talking with Sophie. "Thank you, James. Please wait in the car." Leo took the coffee and waited for the driver to walk away before turning back to the headstone. The Sophie Foundation funded 2 more studies on rare degenerative diseases, he said, as though reporting to someone who could answer him. Dr. Mercer believes they're close to a significant breakthrough in treating advanced Kawasaki disease. Raising Sophie alone had been both the greatest challenge and greatest joy of his life. Between board meetings and business trips, he learned to change diapers, soothe fevers at night, and braid hair before school. He hired nannies, of course, but insisted on being present for all the important moments. When Sophie turned 4, the symptoms began. At first, just frequent falls and bruises that took too long to heal. Leo took her to numerous doctors until a neurologist ordered more detailed tests. The diagnosis hit like a punch: advanced Kawasaki disease, a rare variation affecting the central nervous system. There was no cure, only treatments to slow the inevitable. Leo used his fortune to seek out the best specialists in the world. He funded research, brought in doctors from abroad, turned an entire wing of his mansion into a mini-clinic. For almost a year, he managed to keep Sophie's life almost normal, but then the decline accelerated. "Mr. Roberts asked about you yesterday," Leo went on, sipping the bitter coffee. "The gardener, remember? He planted those sunflowers you loved so much." The last few months with Sophie had been the hardest. Seeing her gradually lose the ability to walk, to hold her toys, and finally even to recognize him, broke something inside Leo that had never repaired. When she finally passed, a part of him died too. Now 2 years later, he followed a mechanical routine. The company thrived under his distant leadership. The Sophie Foundation grew, helping other families. But Leo lived only half a life, attending meetings, keeping up appearances, existing without truly living. "The new pediatric wing will be inaugurated next week," he remarked, finishing his coffee. "They placed a butterfly mural like the one you once drew." That's when he noticed, not far away, partially hidden behind an old oak, a small figure was watching him. Frowning, Leo stashed the empty cup in his coat pocket. It was a child, alone, staring in his direction. Leo looked around, searching for any nearby adult. The cemetery was almost empty that Thursday morning, just an elderly couple leaving flowers on a distant grave, and the groundskeeper sweeping leaves near the main gate. "Excuse me," he called out, taking a few steps toward the child. "Are you lost?" The figure did not reply, but also did not run. Leo moved closer, feeling a curiosity he had not felt in a long time. It was a little girl. She wore a simple blue dress and a denim jacket. Light brown hair fell in soft curls around her face. Then Leo stopped, frozen in place. The world around him seemed to tilt slightly. A buzzing filled his ears as his brain struggled to process what his eyes were seeing. The girl, who appeared to be about 7, was the spitting image of Sophie. The same face shape, the same large, expressive eyes, even the tiny birthmark on her left cheek. "This is impossible," he muttered to himself, feeling his legs weaken. For one irrational moment, Leo thought he was hallucinating. Had his grief finally caused him to see ghosts? Or maybe he had fallen asleep by Sophie's grave and was trapped in a cruel dream. But the girl was solid, real, blinking curiously at him with eyes he knew so well, eyes he had seen close forever 2 years ago. "Hi," he managed to say, his voice faltering. The girl tilted her head slightly, a gesture so familiar it made Leo's heart ache. "Hi," she replied, her voice clear and childlike. "You were talking to the stone." Leo swallowed hard, trying to regain composure. It's my daughter's grave." "Oh?" The girl nodded, as if that explained everything. "I'm sorry." The formality of the phrase sounded odd coming from someone so young. Leo took another cautious step. "Are you here with your parents?" She shook her head. "No, I'm alone." "Alone in a cemetery?" Leo asked, frowning. "How did you get here?" The girl shrugged, a carefree gesture. "I walked." Leo looked around again, searching for any sign of a responsible adult. He turned back to the girl, trying to keep his voice calm despite his racing thoughts. "What's your name?" "Emma," she said, taking a small step forward, stepping fully out of the tree's shadow. In the full morning light, The resemblance was even more striking. Leo felt a chill run down his spine. Emma could have been Sophie's twin, or more disturbingly, Sophie as she would be if she were still alive. "I'm Leo," he introduced himself automatically, extending his hand before realizing it was too formal a gesture for a child. To his surprise, Emma shook his hand seriously. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Leo." "Are you lost, Emma?" he asked, pulling back his hand, which was now trembling slightly. "Not exactly," she answered, glancing briefly at Sophie's grave. "I come here sometimes, it's quiet." "All by yourself?" Leo couldn't hide the disbelief in his voice. Emma nodded. "The orphanage is right over there." She pointed beyond the cemetery walls. "Nobody notices when I slip out." The word orphanage triggered something in Leo's mind. An orphan, who appeared to be the same age Sophie would have been, who looked exactly like Sophie. The coincidence was far too big to be just that, a coincidence. "Did my daughter have the same age as me?" Emma asked suddenly, looking at the date on the gravestone. "She would have," Leo replied, his mind racing with possibilities. "Emma, which orphanage do you live in?" "St. Clara's," she said, adjusting her denim jacket. "I've been there since I was a baby." Leo felt his heart skip a beat. St. Clara's orphanage was less than a mile away. Sarah could easily have left a child there before disappearing. "Do you know your biological parents?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. Emma shook her head. "No, I was abandoned as a newborn. No name, no nothing." She spoke with surprising frankness for someone so young. "They called me Emma because it was the name of the nurse who found me." Leo looked again at Sophie's grave, at the birth date carved in the stone, then back at Emma. The math was simple and unsettling. "How old are you exactly, Emma?" 7, she answered, following his gaze to the headstone. "Almost 8. 7 years old, the same age Sophie would have been, born around the same time, with the same face." Leo felt torn between fear of imagining connections that didn't exist and the desperate hope that there might be more to it. "Mr. Leo?" Emma called, pulling him out of his thoughts. "I need to go back before they notice I left." Leo blinked, returning to reality. "Of course, Can I walk you to the gate?" Emma smiled, a smile that made his heart tighten. "Okay." As they walked side by side along the stone path, Leo struggled to organize his thoughts. The resemblance couldn't be a coincidence. There was something more, something he needed to find out. "Emma," he said, stopping near the cemetery gate, "would it be okay if I visited you sometime? At the orphanage?" The girl looked at him curiously. "Why?" A good question, for which Leo had no simple answer. "Because you look exactly like my late daughter. Because I suspect there's a connection between you two. Because I need to know if I'm going crazy or if there's a reason for this. Because I enjoyed talking to you," he finally said. "And maybe I could bring you a book or something like that." Emma studied his face for a moment with an intensity beyond her years. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. "Sure, Visiting hours are on Sundays and Wednesdays from 2 to 4. "I'll be there," Leo promised. Emma gave him a quick wave and ran toward the street. Leo watched her until she disappeared around the corner, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years. Returning to his car, where James waited patiently, Leo was already formulating a plan. He needed to find out more about Emma, about her origins. He needed to know if what he suspected was possible. "Where to, sir?" James asked as Leo climbed into the back seat. Leo looked out the window one last time at the cemetery where his daughter rested and where he had just encountered a living ghost. "To the office," he answered, pulling out his phone. "And James, a change of plans for the next few days. I need to be free on Wednesday afternoon." As the car drove off, Leo was already searching for the number of Jack Morrison, the private detective he had hired years ago to look for Sarah. He didn't know exactly what he was looking for, but he knew he needed answers. The coincidence was too big to ignore. And for the first time in 2 years, Leo felt something other than constant emptiness in his chest. It wasn't exactly hope, not yet, but it was a purpose. Jack Morrison's office was in an old building downtown. No sign on the door, no smiling receptionist. Just a wooden door with the number 503 in worn metal. Leo knocked twice and entered without waiting for a response. "Hail," Jack greeted him without lifting his eyes from the papers on his desk. Didn't expect to see you so soon after our last case." Leo closed the door and sat in the cracked leather chair in front of the desk. Jack Morrison was a middle-aged man with graying hair and a thin scar across his left eyebrow. An ex-cop, now a private detective specializing in cases that required absolute discretion. "I need your help again." Leo got straight to the point. "I want information on a 7-year-old girl. Name, Emma, St. Clara's Orphanage." Jack finally looked up. "That's unusual. Any special reason?" Leo hesitated for a second, deciding how much to reveal. "I believe there might be a connection to Sarah." Jack nodded slowly. He had led the fruitless search for Sarah 7 years earlier. The woman had vanished completely, like smoke in the wind. "What kind of connection are we talking about?" Leo took out his phone, opened the gallery, and showed Jack a photo of Emma he had discreetly taken during his visit to the orphanage 2 days earlier. Jack looked at the photo, then at Leo. His expression hardened. "Jesus Christ, Hale. She's identical to your daughter." "Exactly." Leo put away the phone. "I need to know everything about her. When she arrived at the orphanage, who dropped her off, medical records, everything." Jack picked up a notepad. "I'll need an advance. Adoption and orphanage records are confidential. It'll require some incentives to gain access." Leo placed an envelope on the desk. 50 grand. Another 50 when you have answers. Total discretion, as always." "Understood." Jack pocketed the envelope. "I'll start right away, but Leo," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "be prepared for any result. Coincidences do happen." "I don't believe in coincidences of this kind," Leo replied, standing up. "Call me as soon as you find something." The following days tested Leo's sanity. On the surface, he maintained his normal routine: meetings with executives, contract reviews, important calls. But his mind stayed locked on Emma and the possibilities her existence suggested. On Tuesday, during a video conference with Japanese investors, his VP had to call his name 3 times for a simple question about financial projections. "Leo, are you okay?" Kevin asked after the meeting. "You seem distant." "I'm fine," Leo replied automatically, "just thinking about the new project." There was no new project. There was only the waiting, the growing anxiety of not knowing. At home, he spent hours in Sophie's room, looking at old photos, searching for similarities and differences between his daughter and Emma. The resemblances were uncanny: the same face shape, the same smile, even the same hand gestures when speaking. On Wednesday, he visited the orphanage again. He talked to Emma for almost an hour, bringing her a storybook Sophie had loved. He watched how the girl frowned when focusing, just as Sophie had. The way she tilted her head when asking a question, another echo of her twin. "Are you coming back next week?" Emma asked when he was leaving. "I am," Leo promised, feeling a lump in his throat. The nun who supervised visits smiled at him. "It's good to see Emma opening up to someone. She's usually reserved with visitors." "Has she been here long?" Leo asked, trying to sound casual. "Since she was a baby," the nun replied. "It's a shame she's never been adopted. She's a wonderful child." Leo nodded, filing that information away. In the car on the way home, he called Jack. "Nothing yet," the detective reported. "I'm waiting on a contact within the adoption system. Be patient." Patience was a luxury Leo did not have. On Thursday, he cancelled all meetings and stayed home, alternating between working on his laptop and checking his phone every few minutes. James, his driver and personal assistant for years, noticed the change. "Sir, forgive me for asking, but are you all right? You haven't cancelled commitments since Sophie's last days," Leo finished. "I'm fine, James. I just need some time." On Friday, the call finally came, but it wasn't from Jack. It was from the orphanage. "Mr. Hale, this is Sister Marianne. I'm calling because Emma is asking if you could come by today. I know it's not a visiting day, but she seems anxious." Leo almost said yes, but held back. He was getting involved too quickly, building expectations. He needed facts first. "I'm sorry, I can't make it today, sister. Please tell Emma I'll be there on Sunday without fail." After hanging up, Leo felt a pang of guilt. What if he was wrong? What if this was merely a cruel coincidence, and he was forming a bond with Emma, only to discover there was no real connection? That night, he couldn't sleep. He stayed in his mansion's library, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him, listening to the rain on the windows. His mind wandered between memories of Sophie and images of Emma, trying to connect the dots of a story he still didn't fully understand. On Saturday morning, Jack finally called. "I have some preliminary information," he said, tension in his voice. "I'd rather not discuss it over the phone. Can I come by your place in an hour?" "Meet me at the office," Leo replied. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. Leo's office at Hale Technologies occupied the entire top floor of the company's skyscraper. Large windows offered a panoramic view of the city, but he barely noticed as he paced back and forth, waiting for Jack. When the detective finally arrived, Leo immediately sensed something important. Jack looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and a serious expression. "What did you find?" Leo asked as soon as he closed the conference room door. Jack placed a folder on the table. "I managed to access the orphanage records. Emma arrived there on February 15, 2017, approximately 1 week old." Leo felt his heart race. Sophie had been born on February 8, 2017. Who brought her there? A woman who didn't identify herself. She left the baby with a letter asking them to care for her, then disappeared. There are no security camera images. Leo sat down, trying to process the information. So Emma was dropped off at the orphanage right after birth, around the same time Sophie was born. Jack nodded gravely. "That's not all. I obtained a copy of the provisional birth certificate the hospital issued. The baby had no name when she arrived, but she had a hospital wristband on." He took out a photocopy from the folder and slid it to Leo. It was a simple certificate with few details. Estimated date of birth, February 8, 2017. Birthplace, unknown. Parents, unknown. "The same birth date as Sophie," Leo murmured, his mind racing. "Leo," Jack leaned forward, "do you think it's possible Sarah gave birth to twins? That she kept one baby and gave the other away for adoption?" Leo felt as if the air had been knocked out of him. The idea had crossed his mind, but hearing it aloud made it more real, more possible. "If that's true," he began, but couldn't finish the sentence. The implications were enormous, painful, impossible to fully grasp. "We still don't have proof," Jack cautioned. "We need more evidence. I'm trying to get Emma's medical records to compare with Sophie's." "What about DNA?" Leo asked. "We could do a test. In theory, yes, but we'd need a court order or the orphanage's authorization. That would draw a lot of attention." Leo stood, walking to the window. The city stretched out below, thousands of lives following their paths, unaware of the emotional earthquake tearing through his world. "If they were twins," he said slowly, "it means Sarah lied to me. She hid one daughter from me. Why?" Jack had no answer. The silence in the room grew heavy for a moment, until Jack's phone rang. "Morrison," he answered. Then his face changed. "Are you sure? When?" "Got it. Thanks." He hung up and looked at Leo, surprise and urgency in his expression. "What is it?" Leo asked, feeling a chill down his spine. "That was my contact at the Central Hospital," Jack said, standing up. "He found something in the files you need to see right now. Something about Sophie's birth." "What exactly?" Jack grabbed his coat. He wouldn't say over the phone. He just said it's crucial and we need to go now, before anyone notices he accessed those records. Leo was already grabbing his car keys. Whatever the truth, he was about to discover it, and something told him nothing would be the same afterward. The corridors of the Central Hospital were nearly empty at that hour of the night. Leo and Jack followed a private security guard to a small room in the back of the administrative wing. A plaque on the door simply read, "Archives." 15 minutes, max," muttered the guard, a middle-aged man with heavy bags under his eyes. "After that, the cameras go back online, mysteriously." Jack nodded, slipping an envelope to the man. 15 minutes is enough, Ramirez." Inside, a slender man in a white coat was waiting. "Doctor." Mitchell, according to his badge, was Jack's contact at the hospital. He looked nervous, constantly adjusting his glasses. "Mr. Hale, this is highly irregular," he began. If they discover I accessed these files without authorization, no one will find out, Leo interrupted, and your help will be well rewarded. The doctor nodded, placing a thick folder on the table. I found this while digitizing old files. Normally, I never would have noticed, but when Mr. Morrison mentioned your daughter's name and the date, he opened the folder, revealing a set of medical documents. Here we have the complete birth record. Sarah Wells, 26, admitted in labor on February 7, 2017 at 11:42 p.m. Leo recognized the quickly filled intake form from that rainy night. He had arrived at the hospital nearly an hour later, after Sophie was already born. Dr. Mitchell flipped the page to a handwritten medical note. At Iwerpon-17 on February 8th, the first baby girl was born, weighing 7.05 pounds. And at 00:23, Leo felt his heart stop. The second, he finished, barely audible. Exactly, the doctor confirmed. They were identical twins. The second weighed 6.6 pounds. Jack looked at Leo, whose expression had turned to stone. There's more, the detective said. Go on, doctor. The doctor turned more pages. Here's the documentation signed by the mother. She chose to keep only the first baby. The second was officially recorded as stillborn. He pointed to a signature at the bottom, the mother's signature and the attending physician, Dr. Lawrence Green. That's medical record falsification, Jack observed. Yes, Dr. Mitchell swallowed hard, and there's more. I found this too. He took out a smaller, yellowed envelope, a letter left by the mother, along with a substantial amount of money, requesting that the second baby be placed for adoption, preferably in another city. Leo took the envelope with trembling hands. The handwriting was unmistakably Sarah's. She planned everything, he murmured. What about this Dr. Green? Jack asked. He passed away 4 years ago, the doctor replied. Cancer. Leo took a deep breath, trying to control the anger welling up inside him. Sarah had not only abandoned him with one daughter, she had hidden the existence of another. She had falsified records, lied, manipulated the entire situation. And the second baby? Leo asked, though he already suspected the answer. According to these notes, the doctor pointed to a small notebook inside the folder. Nurse Angela Moretti was in charge of handling the situation. She retired last year but still lives in the city. Angela, Leo repeated, connecting the dots. Emma. Angela Moretti. A.M. Jack nodded. She probably gave the child her name. We need to talk to that nurse, Leo said. I'm on it, Jack replied. But first, we need absolute certainty. He looked meaningfully at Leo. A DNA test would confirm everything. Leo stared at the documents spread out on the table. Sophie and Emma, two sisters separated at birth by a cold, calculated decision. One raised with love, only to be taken by a cruel disease. The other abandoned, growing up alone in an orphanage. Can you get a DNA sample from Emma without raising suspicion? Leo asked Jack. Leave that to me. A cup, a napkin, a hairbrush, anything will do. 3 days later, Leo was in his office when Jack arrived without warning. The detective's expression said it all. 99.9% probability, Jack announced, tossing an envelope on the table. Emma is Sophie's identical twin sister, your daughter. Leo looked at the lab report, the words swimming before his eyes. It was true then. Not a coincidence, not his imagination desperate for a miracle. Emma was his daughter with Sarah, Sophie's twin sister. She doesn't just look like Sophie, Jack continued. Genetically, they're identical. DNA doesn't lie. Leo closed his eyes for a moment, trying to organize his thoughts. What else did you find out? Jack sat, opening his notebook. I spoke to Angela Moretti yesterday. She remembers the case perfectly. She said she was shocked by the mother's decision, but Dr. Green insisted it was none of their concern. And she took Emma to the orphanage. Yes, but not immediately. She cared for the baby at her own home for a few days, trying to figure out what to do. She even considered adopting her, but was almost 60, and knew she wouldn't be approved. Leo shook his head, imagining his newborn daughter being passed from hand to hand, with no idea where she might end up. She dropped Emma at St. Clara's orphanage with a letter and a small hospital bracelet, Jack continued. She made up a story about finding the child abandoned to avoid questions about the origin. Leo walked over to the window, looking out at the city. His memories of those days had been blurred by exhaustion and the joy of becoming a father. Sarah had told him she was tired, that she needed time to recover. He believed her, letting her go home while he stayed with Sophie in those first days. She never mentioned twins, Leo said softly. Not during the pregnancy, not after. There was no sign. According to the medical records, she had prenatal care at a private clinic, not this hospital, Jack explained. She probably planned everything from the start. Leo turned to face the detective. Why? Why keep one daughter and abandon the other? Jack shrugged. Only Sarah can answer that. Maybe she thought she could handle one child, but not two. Maybe she wanted to please you without fully accepting the responsibility. Or maybe she never wanted either of them, Leo said bitterly, recalling how Sarah disappeared a few days later, leaving even Sophie behind. He pulled a photo of Sophie from his wallet. She was laughing, wearing a birthday hat at her 5th birthday party, 3 months before the first symptoms appeared. And now, just a few miles away, her twin sister lived without knowing her true identity, her story. What are you going to do now? Jack asked. Legally, you're Emma's father. You could file for custody. Leo put the photo back and grabbed his coat. First, I need to see her again with this new knowledge. Saint. Clara's orphanage was an old red brick building surrounded by a small garden. It was Sunday, visiting day, and several families walked around, meeting the children, considering possible adoptions. Leo stayed in his car parked across the street, watching. After a few minutes, he saw Emma come out into the yard with other kids. She wore a simple blue dress and had her hair in a ponytail, swaying as she walked. Leo noticed how she stood slightly apart from the other children, not entirely isolated, but maintaining a subtle distance. The kids started playing tag, running and laughing under the autumn sun. Emma seemed happy, though a bit reserved. Occasionally, she paused and looked around as if searching for someone. Searching for him, Leo realized. He had promised to come that day, but now he hesitated. What would he say to her? How would he explain this? Emma was a 7-year-old who had spent her entire life in the orphanage. Revealing that he was her biological father, that she had a twin sister who died, that her mother had separated them at birth. It was too much, even for an adult. Leo watched as Emma sat alone on a swing, lightly moving her feet. Now that he knew the truth, every gesture seemed familiar. How she tilted her head, how she frowned slightly when in thought, even her walk. "My daughter," he whispered, the reality of those words finally settling in his mind. My daughter is alive. Observing Emma from afar, Leo knew he stood at a point of no return. Any decision he made now would forever change both their lives. Approach her simply as a friend. Reveal his identity immediately, go through legal channels and request custody. Each option had its own risks and consequences. Emma stopped swinging and looked directly at the car. For a brief moment, Leo felt she could see him, feel his presence. Then she smiled, a small, hopeful smile, before going back to join the other children. Leo started the car. He needed time to think, to plan his next step carefully. Emma deserved to know the truth, but at the right time and in the right way. And he had to be ready to take on the responsibility that came with it. The road ahead would be complex, but one thing Leo knew for sure. He would not abandon his daughter again. Even if she never knew, even if she had never been in his arms, Emma had been in his heart from the first moment he saw her. And now at last, he knew why. The folder Jack Morrison placed on Leo's desk contained enough documents to retell an entirely different story than the one Leo knew. Photographs, statements, copies of hospital forms. The detective had done meticulous work. I started with the basics, Jack explained, pointing to the first page of the report. I tracked Sarah's movements in the weeks before and after the girls were born. Leo flipped through the documents, each page revealing a new detail of the elaborate lie Sarah had constructed. According to records, she had prenatal appointments at 2 different clinics. At one deal, she mentioned expecting twins. At the other, only 1 child. She planned this carefully, Leo murmured, his voice filled with bitterness. Jack nodded. Sarah reserved a private room at the hospital, specifically requesting that you not be present during the birth. She claimed stress and that your presence made her nervous. Leo remembered that night. The call informing him Sarah was in labor came during an important meeting. When he arrived at the hospital, everything had already happened. Sarah seemed exhausted, but far too calm for someone who had just given birth. Why wasn't I allowed in right away? According to Nurse Angela, Sarah asked for an hour to pull herself together. During that time, she and Dr. Ian Green arranged the paperwork. Jack pointed to an infant death form with the hospital's official stamp. They recorded one of the twins as stillborn, a baby girl, born at Route 23 on February 8th. Leo felt a tightness in his chest. That was when Emma was born. Exactly, Jack confirmed. While you waited in the lobby, Sarah signed the documents agreeing to the discreet removal of the stillborn. You never knew they were twins. And Dr. Green went along with it, a respected doctor. Jack picked up another document. $50,000 deposited into Dr. Green's offshore account a week later. Sarah had prepared it all, including the bribe. Leo stood abruptly, unable to remain seated. The rage he felt was so intense it made his entire body tremble. Then what? Nurse Angela took the second baby, Emma, to her home temporarily. 3 days later, Sarah left Sophie with you and disappeared. That same day, she transferred more money to Angela, instructing her to drop Emma at St. Clara's. She never wanted either of them, Leo concluded, staring out the window. The city carried on, oblivious to his world collapsing. She left one for me and the other with strangers. Jack flipped more pages in his report. From what I can see in Sarah's financial records, she'd planned her escape long before the twins were born. She bought tickets to Europe 3 months earlier, arranged bank accounts overseas. As if it was all just a temporary inconvenience she needed to handle, Leo said coldly. Apparently, Jack agreed. After that, Sarah moved to Europe. Worked as a freelance photographer in several countries. From what I gathered, she never had any more children. She just went on with her life, like nothing happened. Leo shook his head in disbelief, as if she hadn't abandoned 2 daughters. Records show she had a fairly successful career, Jack continued. Gallery exhibitions, contracts with fashion magazines. She got exactly what she wanted. Leo took a deep breath, trying to process it all. I need to go back to the hospital, talk to more people, understand better what happened. St. Luke's Hospital looked different in daylight. Leo walked through the maternity ward, noticing mothers with newborns, proud fathers taking pictures, families celebrating new life. 7 years ago, he should have had that experience with 2 daughters, not just one. At the maternity reception, an older head nurse named Dorothy greeted Leo. Through Jack's influence, she had agreed to discuss the case, despite how delicate it was. I remember that night, Dorothy said, guiding them to a small nurse's break room. It was my second shift that week. I wasn't directly involved in the birth, but I was on duty when it all happened. What did you see? Leo asked. I heard there were twins. That always causes a bit of excitement among the staff, she explained. But then there was a lot of whispering. Dr. Green giving orders to limit access to the room, forms being rushed through, and no one questioned it? Dorothy sighed. Dr. Green was the head of the department. It wasn't usual to question him. But yes, I found it strange when he announced one of the babies hadn't survived, especially since they never called the pediatric emergency team, which would be standard protocol. She opened a drawer and took out an old logbook. We keep this as a backup, even though everything's digital now. Here, she pointed to an entry. 2 girls born at 12:17 a.m. and 12:23 a.m., both with stable vitals. Then someone crossed out the second entry and wrote stillborn over it. Leo looked at this concrete proof of Emma's existence from the very start. Do you know who changed it? That's Dr. Green's handwriting, Dorothy replied. He made a lot of these changes in his final years here. After he passed, we found several irregularities in his records. Did he do this with other children? Leo asked, horrified at the possibility. Mostly birth records. Some parents didn't want to register children out of wedlock. Others wanted to hide twin pregnancies for family superstitions. Dorothy lowered her voice. We suspect he facilitated many irregular adoptions over the years, and no one was ever held responsible. The hospital preferred to handle it quietly. Too many families involved, too many reputations at stake. Leo shook his head, disgusted by how easily the truth could be manipulated, erased, rewritten. I need copies of everything from that night. I've already set aside what I could find, Dorothy said, handing him an envelope, including the original birth record for the two girls, before the alterations. In the parking lot, Leo paused, looking at the hospital where his daughters had been born, where Sophie came into his life, and Emma was taken from it. If things had been different, maybe Sophie would still be alive. Maybe the disease would have manifested in Emma too, or maybe in neither. So many possibilities, so many what-ifs without answers. Back at his office, Leo spread the documents across the table: hospital forms, Jack's investigative report, photos of Sarah during her pregnancy. Together, they told the story of a woman who meticulously planned how to rid herself of a responsibility she never wanted. Why keep Sophie? Why not Emma? Leo murmured to himself, seeking logic in Sarah's decision. Was it random? Did she just choose the first to be born? Looking again at the medical records, Leo noticed Sophie, the first baby, was slightly bigger and heavier. Maybe she seemed stronger, less likely to have complications. There was no answer in the documents, only the silence of a decision made 7 years ago, whose consequences still reverberated today. Even so, she abandoned Sophie just 3 days later, Leo said to the empty room. It was never about the children. It was always about herself, her freedom, her life without commitments. Leo picked up Sophie's photo again, placing it next to a recent photo of Emma Jack had obtained from the orphanage. They were identical in every detail, two halves of the same person, one raised with love, only to be taken too soon by illness, the other deprived of that love, but still alive, with a whole life ahead of her. It was at that moment the decision crystallized in his mind. Emma was as much his daughter as Sophie had been. The blood running through her veins was the same as his. Chance, or perhaps something more, had brought Emma back into his life. He couldn't change the past or bring Sophie back, but he could ensure Emma had the future she deserved. Leo picked up his phone and called his lawyer. Mark, I need you to start an adoption process immediately, and I want total discretion. As he discussed legal details, Leo felt something he hadn't felt in years: purpose. The void Sophie's death had left wouldn't be filled. Nothing could replace her. But now there was room for something new, a new relationship, a new chance. Tomorrow I'll go back to the orphanage, Leo decided after hanging up. I'll approach Emma gradually, build trust before revealing the truth. Looking once more at the photos of the two girls, Leo felt that somehow Sophie had sent her sister to him. A second chance not just for him, but for Emma too. I'll get it right this time, he promised aloud, for both of you. The municipal park was 2 blocks from Santa Clara's orphanage. According to the information Leo got from the nuns, the children were taken there every Wednesday and Saturday afternoon, weather permitting. So, on that sunny Saturday, Leo parked discreetly across the street and waited. Shortly after 2, a group of children arrived accompanied by 2 nuns. Among them was Emma, wearing a simple blue dress and white sneakers. Her hair was in a loose braid that swayed as she walked. Leo noticed how she remained slightly on the edge of the group, neither excluded nor fully integrated. After a few minutes, he got out of the car and strolled casually through the park, a book under his arm as a cover. He approached the nearest bench to where Emma was now seated alone on a swing, swaying gently. "Hello, Emma," he said, keeping a respectful distance. The girl lifted her eyes, surprised, but then a small smile appeared on her face. "Mr. Leo, you came. I promised I'd come back, didn't I?" He indicated the swing next to her. "May I?" Emma nodded, and Leo sat awkwardly on the child's swing, making her laugh for the first time. "You're too big for that," she observed. "Yes, I guess so," he agreed, smiling. "How are you? Did you like the book I gave you last week?" "I finished it last night," Emma replied, her eyes lighting up. "I loved the part where the girl finds the wounded dragon and takes care of him instead of being scared. It was my—" Leo stopped, almost saying "my daughter's." "My niece's favorite book," he corrected himself quickly. Emma swung her legs, watching him curiously. "Why do you keep visiting me, Mr. Leo?" The direct question caught Leo off guard. He had planned various explanations, but before Emma's inquisitive eyes, they all seemed inadequate. "You remind me of someone who was very important to me," he finally replied with partial honesty. "And I like talking to you. You're a smart kid." Emma seemed to consider the answer, accepting it for the moment. "Sister Marianne said you're rich and important." Leo chuckled softly. "Well, I work in technology. I have a company that makes security apps." "Like the ones that stop hackers?" Emma asked, surprising Leo with her knowledge. "Exactly. How do you know about hackers?" "We have computer lessons once a week at the orphanage. Mr. Paul always talks about digital security." She shrugged. "He says it's important, even for kids." Leo nodded, impressed. "Your Mr. Paul is right. What else do you learn at the orphanage?" So began almost an hour of conversation. Emma talked about her classes, her favorite books, how she loved math but found history boring. Leo listened carefully, noticing every gesture, every expression. The way she frowned when concentrating was exactly like Sophie. The slight tilt of her head when asking a question, another echo of her twin. "You haven't lived in the orphanage your whole life, right?" Leo asked carefully, when the conversation flowed naturally. Emma shook her head, her face growing a bit serious. "No, I was adopted when I was 2 by a couple, Mr. and Mrs. Winters." Leo felt his heart surge. Jack hadn't found any record of that adoption in his initial investigation. "Were they nice?" he asked gently. "Yes," Emma said, looking down. "They were elderly. They couldn't have kids, so they adopted me. Mr. Winters was a piano teacher, and Mrs. Winters made the best chocolate chip cookies in the world." "What happened to them?" Leo tried to keep his voice neutral, but the tension was evident. "They passed away," Emma replied simply. "First Mr. Winters from a heart attack when I was 5, then Mrs. Winters got very sick. Cancer. She died 8 months ago." "I'm so sorry, Emma," Leo said sincerely, resisting the urge to hug her. "It's okay," she shrugged, but Leo sensed her pain beneath the casual gesture. "Mrs. Winters said she'd join Mr. Winters in heaven and they'd watch over me, and that one day I'd find another family." Leo swallowed hard, fighting back emotion. He wanted to say right then, "I am your family. I'm your father. You have a sister who passed away. You'll never be alone again." But he knew that would be too much, too soon. Emma needed to trust him first. "She was right, Emma," he finally said. "You deserve a family that loves you very much." Emma looked at him with eyes identical to Sophie's, filled with a wisdom beyond her years. "Do you have a family, Mr. Leo?" The question hit Leo like a punch. He hesitated. "I had a daughter. She passed away 2 years ago." "That's why you were at the cemetery?" Emma asked, connecting the dots. "Yes, I'm sorry," she said, echoing the words he had offered her moments before. The sincerity in her child's voice made Leo fight back tears. "Thank you," he answered softly. They fell silent for a few moments, both gently swaying on the swings. Then Emma said something that made Leo's heart stop for an instant. "Sometimes I dream about a girl who looks like me. She's always smiling and calling me to play, but I can never reach her." Leo stared at Emma, stunned by the coincidence. Or was it something more? "That's a lovely dream," he managed to say. "Mrs. Winters said maybe she's my guardian angel," Emma went on. "Or maybe a sister I never knew." At that moment, one of the nuns called the children to head back. Emma got off the swing. "I have to go, Mr. Leo. Will you come see me again?" "Of course," he promised, "and next time I'll bring another book." Emma smiled, waved, and ran to join the other children. Leo remained on the swing, watching her go, his heart torn between joy and pain. Leo had barely arrived home when his phone rang. It was Jack. "I found Sarah," the detective announced, not bothering with small talk. Leo froze in the middle of the room. "Where?" "Chicago. She's a marketing executive at Vertex Global, a multinational ad agency. She changed her last name to Brennan, but it's her." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." I have recent photos, address, daily routine, everything you need. Leo sank onto the couch. Send me everything. 20 minutes later, Leo was in his home office, looking at a complete dossier on Sarah's current life. Photos showed a stylish woman with shorter hair, leaving corporate buildings, dining at upscale restaurants, entering a luxury apartment. Sarah Brennan, 33 years old, marketing director at Vertex Global for 3 years, estimated annual salary of $700,000, a $2 million apartment in downtown Chicago, single, no children, frequent trips to New York, London, and Tokyo. You got exactly what you wanted, didn't you? Leo murmured at the photo. Among the documents, Leo found clippings of interviews Sarah had given to business magazines. In one she stated, "I've devoted my life to my career. Some women choose motherhood. I chose professional success. I have no regrets." Anger flared within Leo. No regrets. After abandoning 2 daughters, after one died without her ever knowing, after leaving the other in an orphanage, he read on. Jack had been thorough, digging into every aspect of Sarah's life. There was no sign she ever tried to learn about Sophie or Emma all these years. No donations to orphanages, no online searches for adoption records, nothing indicating regret or curiosity about her daughter's fate. The phone rang again. It was the orphanage. "Mr. Hale, this is Sister Marianne. I'm calling because Emma specifically asked to speak with you. She seems a bit restless. Could you possibly stop by tomorrow? I know it's not a visiting day." "Of course," Leo replied immediately. "Is something wrong?" She found an old newspaper photo in the library, an article where you were on the cover of a business magazine. She started asking a lot of questions about you. Leo felt a knot in his stomach. "I'll be there at 10 in the morning, if that's convenient." After hanging up, he turned back to Sarah's dossier, his mind racing. Emma was beginning to make connections, to ask questions. How long until she noticed the resemblance between them? Or worse, until someone at the orphanage or the press noticed the odd coincidence of a billionaire who'd lost his daughter suddenly taking an interest in a little girl identical to her. Leo picked up his phone again and called his assistant. "James, book me a flight to Chicago and get me the residential address for Sarah Brennan at Vertex Global." The decision was made. Before he could move forward with Emma, before he could tell her the truth or plan a future, he had unfinished business. He had to face Sarah, hear from her own lips why she did what she did, and ensure she wouldn't interfere in Emma's life again. Staring at a photo of Sarah in her luxury apartment, Leo felt a cold determination settle over him. "You can't just vanish and reappear whenever you want," he said to her image. "This time we finish our conversation." The entire night, Leo couldn't sleep. He paced back and forth in his office, reviewing documents, organizing information, preparing for the next steps. Discovering Sarah's whereabouts had opened a new chapter in that complicated story, and now he had to decide how to proceed. "Chicago," he muttered, looking at the most recent photo of Sarah that Jack had obtained, so close and yet so far away. The next morning, the first thing he did was call Mark Peterson, his lawyer for over a decade. "I need to understand exactly what my options are," Leo explained, sitting in his office while describing the situation. Mark listened without interruption, taking occasional notes. "So, you have a DNA test confirming you're Emma's biological father," Mark summarized when Leo finished. "And you want to formally adopt her?" "Yes." "As quickly and discreetly as possible." Mark scratched his chin thoughtfully. "As her biological father confirmed by DNA, you have parental rights that can be reinstated. That's simpler than a standard adoption, especially since the biological mother essentially abandoned the child and the adoptive family passed away." "How long?" "With your influence and resources?" "Maybe 3 months, if we approach Judge Hernandez, but there are potential complications." "Sarah," Leo said, almost growling the name. "Exactly. If she finds out and contests it, claiming she never formally gave up parental rights, it could complicate things." Leo tapped the desk lightly, thinking, "What if I can get her to formally renounce her rights now?" "That would simplify everything," Mark agreed. "But why would she do that?" Leo gave a humorless smile. "Everyone has a price, Mark, even Sarah Brennan." After the call, Leo opened his laptop and organized all the evidence he had collected. He created a digital folder containing copies of the original birth records, the DNA results, statements from hospital staff, photos of Emma and Sophie side by side, showing the undeniable resemblance. He also prepared several legal documents Mark had sent: parental rights relinquishment forms, confidentiality agreements, adoption terms, everything he might need to formalize the situation when the time came. The idea of blackmailing Sarah with public exposure briefly crossed his mind. A high-level executive who had abandoned newborn twins, falsified medical records, and bribed officials. The scandal would destroy her carefully built career, but Leo dismissed the idea quickly. Such a confrontation would be traumatic for Emma, and he didn't want that kind of negativity in her life. "There has to be a better way," he murmured, rubbing his tired eyes. His phone rang, pulling him from his thoughts. It was the orphanage. "Mr. Hale, Sister Marianne here. Emma is asking if you'll be coming today. She seems anxious." Leo looked at the clock. Nearly 4 in the afternoon. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. St. Clara's orphanage was quiet when Leo arrived. Most of the children were in the study room, Sister Marianne explained as she led him to a small visitation room. "Emma has been different since your last visit," she commented. "More inquisitive. She found information about you online. Your story with Hale Technologies, your daughter's passing." Leo felt his chest tighten. "What did she find exactly?" "Only public information, from what I understand. The article about your daughter Sophie's death. The resemblance between you two didn't go unnoticed." Before Leo could respond, the door opened and Emma walked in. She looked more serious than usual, her eyes, so much like Sophie's, studying Leo with a new intensity. "Hello, Mr. Leo," she said formally. "Hey, Emma," he replied, trying to keep his tone light. "How are you?" Instead of answering, she sat in the chair across from him and placed a piece of paper on the table. It was a printout of an old news article showing Leo holding Sophie at a charity event. "She looks like me," Emma stated simply. Leo glanced at the photo, then at Emma, and nodded slowly. "Yes, she does." "Is that why you visit me? Because I look like your dead daughter?" The directness, devoid of any childish sugarcoating, took Leo aback. He realized he had underestimated Emma. She was far too smart to be fooled for long. "At first, yes," he admitted, choosing honesty. "I was shocked when I saw you in the cemetery. The resemblance is extraordinary." Emma nodded, processing. "But there's more to it, isn't there? You wouldn't come so often just because I look like her." Leo took a deep breath. He knew this moment would come, just not so soon. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you, but it's complicated. It might be hard to understand." "I'm one of the smartest kids in my class," she replied, surprisingly confident. "I can understand complicated things." Leo smiled, recognizing the same determination Sophie had. "Remember you told me about your dream? About a girl who looks like you?" Emma nodded, her eyes widening slightly. "I believe that girl wasn't just a dream," Leo continued carefully. "Emma, I've been investigating over the last few days. I discovered things about your birth that change everything." "What things?" she asked, leaning forward. "I found medical records and hospital documents," Leo said, choosing his words with care. "They show that when you were born, you weren't alone. You had a twin sister." Emma went still, her gaze locked on Leo's. "A twin sister?" she whispered at last. "Yes, identical to you." Leo paused, letting the information sink in. "That sister was Sophie, my daughter." The silence that followed felt heavy. Emma looked again at the photo, lightly touching it with her fingertips. "If Sophie was my sister, and she was your daughter, then—" Emma stopped, her eyes going wide with realization. "Yes, Emma," Leo confirmed softly. "I'm your biological father." Emma stood abruptly, her chair scraping the floor. For a moment, Leo feared she would run, but she remained where she was, processing. "Why didn't I know this? Why did I grow up here if I have a father?" The question Leo feared most. How to explain Sarah's actions without vilifying her. How to talk about abandonment to a child who had already lost so much. "I didn't know about you," he finally said. "I only found out recently. When I saw you in the cemetery, I noticed the resemblance, but I never imagined." He sighed. "When your mother left you at the orphanage, I had no idea. She separated us. My mother abandoned me." Emma's voice was small. "It's more complicated than that." Leo tried to soften it, though it was exactly what had happened. "She made decisions she thought were right at the time. And Sophie, did she know about me?" "No," Leo shook his head. "She never knew she had a sister." "She died?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. "Yes," Leo confirmed, the familiar pain tightening his chest. 2 years ago. A rare disease." Emma's eyes unexpectedly filled with tears. "I never got to meet her." Leo reached out hesitantly, placing a hand on Emma's. To his relief, she didn't pull away. "Emma, I know this is a lot to take in at once, and I understand if you need time, but I want you to know that ever since I found out the truth, I've been trying to figure out the best way to tell you. And," he paused, gathering courage, "I'd like to be a part of your life if you want." Emma looked at their joined hands, then back at Leo. "You want to adopt me?" "Yes," Leo answered simply. "If you want." Emma was silent for a long moment. "I need to think," she finally said. "Of course," Leo nodded, respecting her need for space. "Take as much time as you need." She studied his face for another moment. "Will you come back?" "Always," Leo promised. "I'm here now, Emma, and I'm not going anywhere." Back in his car, Leo sat for several minutes, trying to steady his racing heart. The conversation had been emotionally draining but necessary. Emma deserved the truth, or at least part of it. The darker details of Sarah's actions could wait until she was older. Leo picked up his phone and opened his contacts. Jack had provided several ways to contact Sarah: her direct office line, corporate email, even her Chicago home address. He had avoided taking this step so far, focusing first on building trust with Emma. But now that Emma knew some of the truth, it was time to confront the past. After a brief hesitation, Leo typed a short message to Sarah's personal email. "I know about Emma. We need to talk. For her sake." He hit send and exhaled. He had no idea if Sarah would reply or how she'd react. Maybe she'd ignore him altogether. Maybe she'd deny everything. But he had to try. To his surprise, she replied just 10 minutes later. "I'll be in your city next week for a conference. Cafe Meridian, Wednesday, 11 a.m. Come alone." Leo stared at the message, his heart pounding. After 7 years, he would finally face Sarah and demand answers. Why had she hidden Emma? Why had she abandoned both daughters? How could she move on with her life as if they never existed? "For Emma," he whispered, putting away his phone. "And for Sophie." Glancing one last time at the orphanage before leaving, Leo felt a strange mix of apprehension and resolve. Emma's future, his daughter's future, depended on what would happen next week. And he was ready to do whatever it took to ensure she never felt abandoned again. Cafe Meridian was on a quiet street, far from busy shopping districts and crowds. It was a small, discreet place, frequented mostly by writers and professionals seeking a calm environment to work. Leo arrived 20 minutes early, choosing a table in the back that offered privacy, but also a clear view of the entrance. He ordered only a black coffee and let it sit, growing cold, while he mentally reviewed everything he wanted to say. Beside him, a thin folder held copies of the most important documents: the DNA test, the tampered hospital records, the original birth certificate showing the twins, proof that left no room for denial. At 11:05, she walked in. Sarah Brennan looked like she had stepped straight out of a business magazine, hair perfectly styled in a modern cut, a flawless grey suit, a confident posture. Her eyes locked onto Leo's immediately, as if she knew exactly where he'd be seated. For a brief moment, he thought he saw hesitation in her eyes, but it vanished so quickly he might have imagined it. Leo didn't stand when she approached. Sarah sat across from him, placing her designer handbag on the empty chair beside her. "Leo," she said by way of greeting, her voice controlled and professional. "You look well." So do you, he replied automatically. Success seems to be suiting you. A waiter approached and Sarah ordered a sugar-free cappuccino. Only when he left did the uncomfortable silence settle between them. Let's get straight to the point, Leo finally said, opening the folder. Emma. Sarah showed no surprise. Yes, Emma, I understand you found her. By accident, Leo clarified. At the cemetery, visiting Sophie's grave. Fate, then, Sarah remarked with a slight shrug. Or coincidence. Leo slid the DNA results toward her. No coincidence. Emma is my daughter, our daughter. Sophie's identical twin sister. Sarah glanced briefly at the document, then looked away as if it were irrelevant. Yes, they're twins. And? Her cold response made Leo's blood boil. And? You hid a daughter from me. You falsified medical records. Bribes. Abandonment. Shall I continue? Sarah's coffee arrived, and she took a calm sip before answering. Leo, what do you actually want? An apology? An explanation? Or did you just want to see me squirm? I want the truth, Leo replied, keeping his voice low but intense. Why, Sarah? Why separate two sisters? Why let me think we had only one daughter? Sarah set the cup down and looked directly into Leo's eyes. Something in her expression shifted. The professional mask slipped slightly, revealing a hardness he didn't recognize from the woman he had known 7 years ago. The truth, fine. She straightened up. I never wanted children, Leo. Never. The pregnancy was an accident. A lapse in my own caution that should never have happened. Leo felt as though he'd been punched. Even suspecting something like this, hearing it so bluntly was different. When I found out I was pregnant, my first instinct was to end it, Sarah continued, her voice as calm as if she were discussing a business report. But I waited too long, hesitated. By the time I made a decision, the doctor told me there were twins. That complicated things. Complicated? Leo echoed, incredulous. Yes, 2 babies meant a riskier, more noticeable pregnancy. People were already commenting on my interesting condition, hurting my professional credibility. She paused. So I decided to carry on but give the babies up for adoption afterward. A clean solution. Without telling me, Leo asked, his voice betraying his controlled anger. Sarah took another sip of coffee. You were always sentimental, Leo. I knew you'd want the children, want a family, the whole package. And I wasn't ready for that argument. Leo shook his head, trying to grasp the coldness with which she spoke of her own children. So you planned everything, the birth, the lie about one baby being stillborn. Yes, I paid well to ensure discretion. Dr. Green had a history of flexibility with certain procedures. Sarah briefly glanced at the window. The plan was simple. Register one as stillborn, give the other up for adoption and move on with my life. But you left Sophie with me, Leo pointed out. Why? Sarah sighed as if the question was exhausting. A last-minute decision, when I saw you in the waiting room, so anxious, so hopeful. I thought maybe one baby would be manageable for you. Your company was already stable. You had resources. One child wouldn't completely destroy your life. While 2 would, Leo asked, disbelief in his voice. Exactly. Sarah showed no sign of remorse. Twins require a lot more attention, more help, more explanations. One child you could handle on your own. It would keep you busy, but not overwhelmed. It was, she searched for the word, a compromise. A compromise, Leo repeated, voice barely above a whisper. You treated our daughters like assets in a divorce. It was a practical decision, Sarah responded. Sophie would stay with you. Emma would go to a family who truly wanted a baby. Everyone would win. Except you abandoned Sophie as well 3 days later, Leo pointed out, anger rising again. Yes, well, Sarah waved a hand dismissively. I tried. Leo, I really did. But those 3 days I spent with you and Sophie made it clear I had no maternal instincts. I felt nothing looking at her. No connection, no instant love everyone talks about. Just responsibility, a burden. Leo felt nauseated hearing these words. So you ran. I prefer to say I recognize my limitations, Sarah corrected. I left Sophie with someone who genuinely loved her. You. It was the most honest decision I could make. She took the last sip of her coffee before continuing, and it worked out perfectly, didn't it? You were an excellent father to Sophie. You gave her 5 years of love and care. No one could have done better. And Emma? Leo's voice trembled. What about your plans for her? The nurse was supposed to take her to a specific adoption agency, Sarah explained. But apparently, she got attached to the child and took her to the nearest orphanage. A deviation from the plan, but the end result was the same. Emma out of my way. The casual cruelty of these words momentarily robbed Leo of speech. Sarah took advantage of his silence to check her watch. Sophie died, Leo finally said, his voice hoarse. 2 years ago. A rare disease. For a moment, something like emotion flickered across Sarah's face, but it vanished quickly. I'm sorry for your loss, she said formally. It must have been hard. You don't seem surprised, Leo noted. Did you already know? I saw a small note in a local paper a couple of years back, Sarah admitted. I didn't look into it. Just happened to see it. And you felt nothing. You didn't want to know more. You didn't think about Emma, if she might have the same condition? Sarah sighed. Leo, I understand this is hard for you to accept, but I have no emotional connection to those children. I never did. To me, they were consequences of a wrong decision, not people I loved. Leo felt as if he were looking at a stranger. How could he have loved this woman? How had he failed to see the coldness behind her eyes? What about now? He finally asked. What do you want? Nothing, Sarah answered plainly. I don't want anything from you or Emma. I assume you plan to adopt her now that you've found her. Leo nodded stiffly. Well, I won't interfere, Sarah assured him. I'll sign whatever parental rights relinquishment your lawyer draws up. My only condition is total discretion. My career is important to me. And a scandal about child abandonment wouldn't be unhelpful. That's all you care about, your career. Your public image, Leo asked, incredulous. Sarah tilted her head slightly. It's who I am, Leo. Who I've always been. You only saw what you wanted to see 7 years ago. A passionate woman, a doting mother-to-be. But I was never that person. She took out a card from her purse. This is my attorney's contact. Send the documents to him, and I'll sign them with no objection. She placed the card on the table and stood. I hold no ill will toward Emma. I hope she's happy with you, but I want no contact, no visits, no attempt to form some sort of family bond. Is that clear? Leo looked at her, unable to reconcile this cold, calculating woman with the Sarah he thought he knew. Crystal clear, he finally replied. Sarah straightened her blazer. Then I believe our conversation is over. Good luck, Leo. She turned to leave, but Leo called out to her one last time. Sarah. She paused, looking over her shoulder. Do you regret anything? For a fleeting moment, something like vulnerability crossed her face. I regret not being more careful that night you took me to dinner in Napa. The rest were just consequences I managed the best way I could. With that, she left the cafe, each step firm and determined, not looking back. Leo remained seated, staring at his untouched coffee, now completely cold. His body felt heavy, pinned to the chair by the magnitude of the revelations. The truth he had sought was colder and harsher than he could have imagined. Everything had been calculated from the start. Sarah never wanted her daughters, never felt even a spark of the love he felt for Sophie, and now for Emma. To her, the girls were inconveniences to be disposed of as efficiently as possible. He thought of Emma, waiting at the orphanage, beginning to process the truth of her origins. He thought of Sophie, who lived and died never knowing she had a twin in the world, 2 lives shaped by Sarah's cold decisions. Waiter, Leo finally called, his voice strangely calm. Check, please. As he paid, one certainty grew within him. Sarah had abandoned her daughters without a second thought, but he would not abandon Emma. She deserved to know she was loved, that she belonged, that she had a father who desperately wanted her in his life. Leo stepped out into the cool morning air, feeling both exhausted and determined. The confrontation he had dreaded was over, and although the truth was painful, it was also liberating. Now he could move forward, focused on one goal only, giving Emma the home and love she had always deserved. His office remained dark as he sat, unmoving, gazing out the window at the city lights. 3 days had passed since meeting Sarah, yet her words still echoed in his mind like a cruel mantra. I never wanted kids. An unwanted accident. No emotional connection. Her coldness was worse than any scenario he had imagined. Even having known Sarah, even suspecting her motives, Leo never thought she would speak of her own children so indifferently, like mere mistakes to be corrected, obstacles in her career plan. For the 1000th time, Leo opened Jack's file on Sarah Brennan. Recent photos showed her smiling at corporate events, accepting awards, posing for business magazines, a carefully built life in which children had never fit. "Sir," James's voice broke into his thoughts, "Mr. Peterson is on the phone. He says it's urgent." Leo rubbed his tired eyes. "Thank you, James. I'll take it." Mark Peterson, his lawyer, had good news. "We received the parental rights waiver documents from Miss Brennan's attorney. All signed, notarized, legally impeccable." "She didn't waste any time," Leo noted, unsurprised. "It's all quite straightforward from here," Mark continued. "Sarah never officially recorded any claim to Emma. Legally, you can proceed as the biological father, claiming custody of the child you didn't know existed. With the DNA test and Sarah's relinquishment, the process should be fairly direct." "How long?" 2, maybe 3 months. Judge Hernandez is on vacation, but I managed to schedule a preliminary hearing with Judge Rivera next week. She's known for favoring family reunification whenever possible. What about the orphanage? I contacted them discreetly. Sister Marianne seems very supportive of the idea of Emma finding a permanent home, especially with her biological father. She mentioned Emma's been asking about you every day. Leo felt another pang of guilt. He hadn't visited Emma since confronting Sarah, needing time to process everything and decide how to proceed. Now he realized his absence might have felt like abandonment to her. "I arranged a visit for tomorrow," Mark added. "Supervised by the social worker, Mrs. Patel. She'll evaluate your interaction as part of the procedure." "Thanks, Mark. Send me all the documents I need to review." Leo hung up and stared at the phone. The legal part now seemed simple. Sarah had relinquished any claim. The DNA test confirmed paternity. The orphanage supported reunification. But far more complex questions remained. What would he tell Emma about Sarah? How much of the truth could and should he share with a 7-year-old? How to explain that her mother never wanted her without shattering her already fragile self-esteem? The following morning, Leo found himself nervously rearranging the books on a shelf in the orphanage's visiting room. Mrs. Patel, a middle-aged woman with keen eyes, observed his every move, taking discreet notes on her clipboard. "Relax, Mr. Hale," she suggested gently. "We're not looking for perfection, just a genuine connection." Leo nodded, trying to steady himself. "Sorry, it's important to you," she finished, smiling for the first time. "That's good. Emma needs someone who cares enough to be nervous." The door opened to you and Emma entered, wearing a simple yellow dress and sneakers. Her hair was tied into 2 braids, and she appeared both anxious and guarded. "Hi, Emma," Leo greeted, his heart pounding at the sight of her. "Hi," she replied softly, sitting in the chair across from him. "I thought you weren't coming back." Her comment hit Leo like a punch. "I'm sorry. I had important things to take care of, but I'd never stop coming back." Emma nodded, her eyes studying his face. "Things about me?" "Yes," Leo confirmed, "about how we can be together." Mrs. Patel watched silently as Emma processed this. "You still want to adopt me?" "Even knowing I'm not Sophie." "Emma," Leo said, leaning forward, "I never wanted to adopt you just because you resemble Sophie. I want to adopt you because you are my daughter I thought I'd never met." Emma's eyes widened slightly. "You really are my dad, for real?" "Yes," Leo confirmed. "The DNA test proved it. You and Sophie were identical twins. Both my daughters with—" He hesitated, unsure how much to divulge. "With my mom," Emma concluded. "Where is she? Why did she give me up for adoption?" The question Leo dreaded. He glanced at Mrs. Patel, who gave a small, encouraging nod. as if to say that the truth, however difficult, was important. "Your biological mother is named Sarah," Leo began carefully. "She'd made some tough decisions when you and Sophie were born, decisions I didn't know about then." "She didn't want me?" Emma asked bluntly, her perception startling Leo. "Sarah wasn't ready to be a mother," Leo chose his words cautiously. "She had other plans for her life, and being a mom wasn't part of them. Not even Sophie." Leo swallowed. "No. She left Sophie with me and disappeared a few days later." Emma processed this, her small face serious. "So she didn't want either of us." It wasn't a question, and the mature understanding in her voice broke Leo's heart. He fought the urge to sugarcoat the reality. "Sarah made choices thinking only about herself," he said at last. "But that doesn't mean you aren't worthy of love, Emma. It just means she wasn't capable of giving it." Emma was silent for a long moment. "What about you?" "Me," Leo echoed, confused. "Can you love me even though I'm not Sophie?" Leo felt tears welling up. "Emma, I already love you, not because you look like Sophie, but because you're you, my daughter. A wonderful, bright, brave person I'm honored to know and love." Something changed in Emma's face, a small spark of hope lighting her eyes. "Did you talk to her, Sarah?" Leo hesitated again, but chose a partial truth. "Yes, recently. He picked his words carefully. "Agreed you'd be better off with me. She doesn't want to see me. She lives far away," Leo answered, avoiding the harshness of Sarah's total rejection. "She's focused on her career, but this gives us a chance to be a family if you want." Emma looked down at her hands, thinking, "Can I ask more questions about her later?" "Of course," Leo promised, relieved at the temporary delay. "Whenever you want, I'll answer as best I can." Mrs. Patel finally spoke up. "Emma, how would you feel about spending more time with Mr. Hale? Maybe visiting his home?" Emma looked at Leo, then the social worker. "I'd like that." The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Leo threw himself into the adoption process with the same intensity he once devoted to business deals. His mansion, once a cold and empty space, gradually transformed with the prospect of Emma living there. He converted one of the guest rooms into the perfect space for a 7-year-old girl, discreetly consulting Sister Marianne about Emma's preferences. "She loves stars and planets," the nun had mentioned. "She spends hours in the library looking at astronomy books." So the bedroom ceiling became a mural of the night sky with glow-in-the-dark constellations. Shelves were filled with books on space, science, and adventure. Leo carefully designed a space reflecting Emma, not a replica of Sophie's room. The supervised visits shifted from meetings at the orphanage to outings at the park, then afternoons at Leo's house. Emma gradually opened up, her initial reserve fading into a natural curiosity. "Did Sophie like stars too?" she asked one day during a picnic in the mansion's garden. "Not as much," Leo answered honestly. "She was crazy about animals. She wanted to be a vet." Emma nodded, filing that difference away with satisfaction. "Can I see pictures of her?" Leo hesitated only for a moment before showing the album he'd brought. Emma flipped through it quietly, watching her twin sister grow through the images, from a smiling baby to a 5-year-old with bright eyes identical to hers. "She looked happy," Emma said, touching a photo of Sophie laughing on a swing. "She was," Leo confirmed, the familiar pain now mingled with gratitude. "Even when she got sick, Sophie kept that smile." "What sickness did she have?" "Kawasaki disease, in an advanced form. It's very rare and affects the nervous system." Emma frowned, worried. "Could I have it, too?" "No," Leo reassured her quickly. "We did tests when we started the adoption process. You're perfectly healthy." Emma's relief was palpable, followed by another question. "What was the house like when Sophie was here?" "Louder," Leo smiled. "She loved music, tried to play the piano. Well, tried, and sang all the time." "Mr. Winters had a piano," Emma said, referring to her late adoptive parents. "He tried to teach me, but I wasn't very good." "We can try again if you want," Leo offered, "or any other instrument that interests you." Emma thought for a moment. "Maybe the violin. Ms. Chen at the orphanage plays it, and it sounds pretty." "Then violin it is," Leo agreed, making a mental note to find the best teacher in the city. As the visits continued, Leo learned more about Emma, her passion for challenging puzzles, her surprising knack for numbers, her irrational fear of butterflies. They have weird legs. Each discovery was a treasure, each difference from Sophie a reminder that Emma was her own person, unique and special. One afternoon, while assembling a new telescope Leo had bought, Emma paused, holding a small piece between her fingers. "If I come live here," she began tentatively, "will I have to change schools?" Leo's heart skipped a beat at the words, "come live here," the first time Emma mentioned the possibility as something real. "Probably," he answered, trying to sound casual. "The local school here is excellent, but we can visit first to see if you like it." Emma nodded, considering. "And can I still visit the orphanage? And Mr. and Mrs. Winter's grave?" "Of course," Leo promised, "whenever you want. They were your family for years, Emma. I would never ask you to forget them. And Sophie's grave." Her question caught Leo off guard. "Yes, we can go together. Would you like that?" Emma nodded again. "She's my sister, even if we never met." They continued setting up the telescope in silence until Emma spoke again. "The judge will ask me if I want to live with you, right?" "Yes," Leo confirmed. "It's important that the decision is yours too." Emma tightened a screw with determination. "And if I say yes, will I live here forever? Or could you change your mind?" The fear behind her question was clear. A child who had lost too much, afraid of being cast aside again. "Emma," Leo said, setting aside the telescope parts and looking straight at her, "if you decide you want to live with me, that will be forever. I'll be your dad not just legally, but in every way that matters. I will never change my mind." Emma studied him with those penetrating eyes that seemed to see through any lie. "Promise." "I promise," Leo said without hesitation, "with all my heart." To his surprise, Emma held out her hand, pinky finger extended. "Pinky promise." "It's the most serious one." Leo linked his pinky with hers, feeling both the fragility and the strength of that small gesture. "Pinky promise," he repeated, his voice husky. Emma grinned, a genuine smile lighting up her whole face. "I think I already know what I'm going to tell the judge," she declared, turning back to the telescope. "Oh, really?" Leo asked, his heart hammering. "And what's that?" Emma carefully adjusted the lens before answering, her voice small but resolute. "I'm going to say, I want to go home, with you." Her words hung in the air like a promise, like a new beginning. Leo looked at his daughter, his living found daughter choosing him, and felt something he hadn't felt since Sophie's death, complete and absolute hope. "Home," he repeated softly. "That sounds perfect." The courtroom was nearly empty, just as they had planned. Only the judge, a court officer, the attorneys, and the two Lancaster siblings, an intimate ceremony for a moment that, although merely a legal formality, carried immense emotional weight for them both. Victor adjusted his tie, feeling oddly more nervous than during any billion-dollar negotiation he'd ever handled. Next to him, Isabel smoothed her navy blue dress repeatedly, carefully chosen for the occasion, a piece reflecting the transformation from the wary street kid into a confident preteen who now offered the judge a timid smile. "I understand this is an unusual situation," commented Judge Ramirez, looking over the documents before him. "Biological siblings, with one petitioning to legally adopt the other." "Yes, Your Honor," Victor's lawyer replied, "but as explained in our petition, the exceptional circumstances justify this measure." The judge nodded, peering over his glasses directly at Isabel. "Ms. Lancaster, you're 11 now, old enough for your opinion to be considered in this process. Do you understand what's happening today?" Isabel squared her shoulders, her voice surprisingly firm. "Yes, sir. My brother is adopting me legally, so nobody can separate us again." "And this is what you want?" "More than anything," she answered without hesitation. The judge smiled, the first sign that judicial formality was giving way to something warmer. "In my 30 years on this bench, I've presided over hundreds of adoptions. Each one represents a new beginning, a family choosing to form or expand through love and commitment." He paused, briefly closing the file. "But I've rarely seen a story like yours, separated by the system, reunited by fate, now formalizing a bond that, in truth, was never really broken. Victor felt a lump form in his throat as the judge continued the proceedings. The past 12 months had changed his life in ways he never could have imagined on that rainy night, when a stranger girl grabbed his hand and accused him of abandoning her. "Please rise for the final decree," instructed the court officer. Victor and Isabel stood side by side, their hands instinctively meeting between them. "Having reviewed all documentation and heard the relevant testimonies," the judge declared, "I hereby decree that, from this moment on, Victor Thomas Lancaster is officially the adoptive father of Isabel Marie Lancaster, with all the rights and responsibilities of that role." The judge smiled. "Although I should note that, practically speaking, you'll remain siblings just as nature intended." With the strike of the gavel, it was done. A legal technicality transformed into an emotional victory, the guarantee that the system which once tore them apart would never again have the power to do so. "Congratulations," said the judge, stepping down to shake Victor's hand and offer Isabel a warm smile. "You two have come a long way." Leaving the courthouse into the bright spring morning light, Victor looked at his sister, now officially his daughter in legal records, though both knew their true relationship transcended such definitions. "Now what?" Isabel asked, squinting against the sun. "Now," Victor replied, "we celebrate, in our own way." There was no grand party, no lavish celebration that might mark significant events in Victor's former life. Instead, following Isabel's wish, they drove to the ocean, to a quiet beach they had discovered together a few months prior. Walking barefoot on the sand, Victor reflected on the countless changes of the past year. Nexus Tech continued to thrive under shared leadership that allowed him a healthier balance between work and personal life. The Lancaster Foundation had expanded beyond initial expectations, its family tracking program already reuniting 17 children with relatives they thought lost forever. But the greatest change lay in the two human beings who now sat on the sand, sharing a simple picnic while watching the waves. "Remember the day we met?" Isabel asked, nibbling on a sandwich. "I was so scared and so angry, and I was completely lost," Victor admitted, without realizing what I was missing. Isabel smiled, that open smile that took months to appear regularly, no longer the cautious, calculating expression of a street kid, but the genuine grin of someone secure enough to show unguarded joy. "Did you know I won first place at the regional science fair?" she said offhandedly, changing the subject with the ease typical of her age. "My ecosystem mapping app goes to state competition next month." "Oh, did you? I've only heard you mention that about 17 times since yesterday," Victor teased, earning a playful wad of napkin thrown in his direction. Isabel's natural talent for technology had blossomed over the past year. What started as curiosity about Victor's work turned into genuine passion, with Isabel not only learning basic coding, but applying it in creative ways that surprised even Nexus's veteran engineers. Her social life had also expanded significantly. From a girl who could barely trust adults, Isabel now had a close group of friends, participated in the school science club, and had recently started swimming lessons, a once crippling fear of water transformed into enthusiasm through patient instruction. "Dr. Martinez said we don't need weekly sessions anymore," Isabel remarked, drawing patterns in the sand with her finger. "Does that mean we're healed?" Victor pondered the question. "I don't think healed is the right word. Transformed, maybe. Strengthened by the scars instead of limited by them." Isabel nodded, contemplating the answer. "I still have nightmares sometimes," she admitted. "But now when I wake up, I know exactly where I am. And that you'll be there if I call." "Always," Victor promised, feeling the weight and honor of that simple truth. After lunch, they decided to build a sandcastle, a seemingly childish activity they had discovered to be surprisingly therapeutic. Victor G., the corporate architect of glass and steel skyscrapers, now applied the same meticulous focus to towers of wet sand. Isabel, with her street smarts, always found creative solutions to reinforce wobbly structures. "Did you know I read in the orphanage records that we used to do this when we were little?" Victor mentioned as they worked. "Apparently, our parents took us to the beach in the summers, and building sandcastles was a family tradition." Isabel paused, a decorative shell in mid-air. Really, I don't remember it. You were too young, but I have flashes of it now. Our dad always insisted on digging a moat. They worked in silence for a moment, each processing this newly uncovered connection to a past buried under layers of trauma and separation. We could add a moat now, Isabel finally suggested, her casual tone failing to completely hide her underlying emotion. So they did, Manes, expanding their initial castle to include that piece of their shared past, a symbolic bridge between what they had lost and what they had rebuilt. As the afternoon wore on, conversation flowed freely through various topics. Victor's plans to expand the foundation's work into Mexico next year, Isabel's summer project involving artificial intelligence, the possibility of adopting a dog, still under negotiation, with Isabel passionately lobbying for it while Victor raised practical concerns about pet care. I never thought I'd have this, Isabel said suddenly, watching the sun begin its slow descent toward the horizon. A normal life, a future. Is it normal to feel like none of this is real sometimes? Victor asked. Like I could wake up and find it was all a dream? Isabel nodded. Doctor, Martinez says that's common for people who've gone through big traumas followed by big joys. It takes time for the brain to accept that happiness can be stable. Since when did you become so wise? Victor teased, once again impressed by his sister's emotional maturity. I've always been, she replied with a mischievous grin. You just took a while to notice. The sun was setting when they decided to top their castle with an improvised flag, a stick with a leaf tied to it. As the finishing touch, Isabel picked up a shell and carefully engraved into the wet sand at the base. Lancaster rebuilt 2023. Victor looked at the inscription, feeling the profound significance of that simple act. Perfect, he said, his voice thick with emotion. They sat side by side, admiring their finished work as the waves gradually approached the castle. There was no rush to move, no urge to protect what they had built. There was beauty in the impermanence of the physical structure, contrasting with the permanence of the bond it represented. Victor, Isabel said, breaking the contemplative silence. Yes. Thank you for finding me. Victor smiled, draping an arm around her shoulders. Actually, you found me. Remember. Isabel leaned into him, accepting his embrace with the ease it had taken months to develop. I guess we found each other. As the sun sank into the horizon, casting golden rays over the water, the sandcastle finally met the gentle waves. Rather than fighting the inevitable, they watched with peaceful acceptance as their creation gradually returned to the ocean. We can always build another one tomorrow, Isabel commented. Maybe even bigger. Definitely bigger, Victor agreed. And stronger. They stayed on the beach until the last light of day faded, the sky transforming into a tapestry of stars above them. The future stretched out ahead, not an intimidating unknown or a spreadsheet of corporate goals, but a horizon of possibilities they would face together. The sandcastle was gone, but what it represented remained, a family rebuilt, a bond restored, and the certainty that some connections, no matter how tested by time or circumstance, simply refuse to be broken forever. Back in the car, Isabel fell asleep in the passenger seat, her face relaxed in a nightmare-free slumber. Victor drove calmly along the coastal road, taking his sister home. Not the luxurious penthouse that had once been solely his residence, but the true home they had created together. In the rearview mirror, he could see only the distant outline of the beach where their sandcastle had briefly stood. But it was enough. Some things need not endure physically to leave a permanent mark. The future awaited them, a new chapter ready to be written. Not perfect, certainly with challenges of its own, but faced hand in hand, exactly as it should have been from the start.